Today I'll be speaking about a former Lucchese member who cooperated and as a result of doing so, did considerable damage not only to the Lucchese family, but to the other families as well. His name is Frank Gioia, and he actually has a new name, which I'll get into later. Gioia grew up in a Little Italy section of Manhattan. Back in those days, Little Italy, an Italian enclave, was replete with wise guys, including Gioia's father, Frank Sr., who was a member of the Lucchese family. The area was also home to a number of social clubs, one of which Gioia's grandfather Tony owned on Grand Street, and his father had a social club on Broome Street. One of Gioia's uncles was killed and found in the trunk of a car. So organized crime was a big part of his upbringing. His life of crime started at the age of 12. When most kids were trading baseball cards or playing stickball, Gioia was robbing cars. This led to more serious crimes such as dealing marijuana, doing stick-ups, loan sharking, and bookmaking. By age 18, he shot a bouncer in the leg for disrespecting another associate. Initially, Gioia gravitated towards the Genovese family. However, the West Side wasn't inducting new members at the time. Determined to get straightened out, and since one of his cousins was a member of the Lucchese family, Gioia changed directions, or rather families. His cousin was Frankie Bones Papani, who now goes by the name Frankie Sharp, and he started bringing Gioia around. In time, Gioia became an associate of Lucchese captain Georgie Neck Sapola's crew, and by 1991, the family would put Gioia up for membership. During that time, the Luccheses weren't only in disarray, they were fractured. Both the boss and underboss were fugitives, and in July of 91, the Lucchese boss Vicamuso was captured in Scranton, Pennsylvania. The family was operating under a panel, which consisted of Sal Avellino, Frankie Lastarino, and Anthony Boat Barata. On October 2nd, 1991, 5 guys were ushered into a house in Howard Beach, and one by one they would be called into the basement. Gioia was driven there by Papani. Also being inducted that day was Jody Calabrese, who I was friends with on Long Island, where he runs an Infiniti dealership in Massapequa for his uncle. Pat Thomas D'Ambrosio, who I was away with, Joe Torti Tortorello, who I also was away with, and Gregory Capello. The Lucchese panel was present, as well as 5 of their captains. Sally Avellino would oversee the ceremony. Standing in to sponsor Gioia was Lucchese captain Georgie Conti. Being Georgie Neck was a fugitive at the time, so it was Georgie Conti who pricked Gioia's finger that day. Anthony Boat sponsored Fat Thomas. Gioia was the youngest of the group at age 24, quite young to be straightened out. After all 5 guys were inducted, Frankie Lastarino had them lock arms, where they repeated, "We are brothers now, one family, one Bagada." This group would be coined the class of 1991. Inside of 6 years, one guy would die, everyone would go to prison, and Gioia would flip. The person that died was Capello while he was in prison. Ironically, the 8 Lucchese members present at their induction also all went to prison. Let me give some insight as to what takes place following an induction ceremony. Usually, wherever it's held, they have catered food, sometimes a little wine. But when the new members leave, they'll usually go for dinner and drinks with whoever they're close to. At that point, the world is your oyster, as they say. You either hit the ground running or walking. By Gioia's own account, as a Lucchese member, he participated in an array of crimes, including arson, extortion, and numerous assaults. He was known to be good with his hands. In fact, he practiced martial arts and earned a black belt in karate. In addition to those crimes, he was also involved in murder plots and gun and drug trafficking. He had partnered up with a major narcotics dealer, Rafi Cuomo. Rafi was a member of the Lucchese's Harlem crew and the childhood friend of Fat Thomas. He owned the infamous Ray's Pizza on Prince Street, a pizzeria where you could grab a slice and a few packages of heroin. As a result of dealing narcotics, Gioia began to make a lot of money. He even got himself a brand new BMW. I remember one day being in the car in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, with Johnny Sideburns, and he pointed out a building and asked if I could guess who owned it. Naturally, I had no idea. He told me that Frankie Gioia and his father, they owned it. They owned a few of them around here. In 1992, Gioia was involved in a murder alongside Papani. The victim was a Gambino associate named Frankie the Blonde Mariconda, who made the mistake of making a sexual comment to Papani's girl. Papani, feeling disrespected, wanted Mariconda killed. Gioia's part in the murder was holding Mariconda down while Papani shot him. That same year, he was arrested in Brooklyn for illegally possessing a handgun. But Gioia's world wouldn't turn upside down until the following year, 1993, when he was arrested on federal drug charges involving a heroin pipeline from New York to Boston. According to Gioia, his decision to flip came after a 1994 visit at Otisville from another cousin, Vinnie Baldi Salinati, who also was a fellow Lucchese member. Actually, Salinati was part of the Brooklyn faction headed by Johnny Sideburns at the time. During the visit, Salinati told Gioia that Papani was looking to kill his father over money. Coincidentally, Salinati would eventually wind up cooperating as well. At the time, Gioia was waiting to be sentenced to 7 years and reached out to the FBI, telling them that he wanted to cooperate. In April of 1995, Gioia signed a cooperation agreement. As part of that agreement, he began revealing information regarding all he knew about the Mafia and its members. He subsequently was sentenced to 6.5 years, but received time served. While incarcerated, he had 2 fights, both ending with the other guys receiving broken jaws. He was released in 1999, and along with his mother and father and sister and brother-in-law, he entered the Witness Protection Program and was relocated to Arizona. He was issued a new birth certificate, social security card, and driver's license under the name Frank Capri. With his new identity, he launched a new career as a real estate developer and created a company named Capri Houses. He wouldn't be called as a witness for the government until 1988 in a case against Michael and Bobby Spinelli, who were on trial for the March 10, 1992 attempted murder of Patricia Capizzola, who was the sister of former Lucchese captain Pete Chiodo. Chiodo survived an attempted hit in May of 1991 and began cooperating soon after. Capizzola was hit by 2 bullets, one of which lodged in her neck and the other one ricocheted off her back. Remarkably, she suffered no internal injuries and was released from a Staten Island hospital days after. Gioia testified about a prison conversation he had with the Spinelli brothers, where they discussed the details of the attempted hit on Capizzola. Michael Spinelli complained that although he played a key role in the shooting, he still hadn't been inducted into the family. He asked Gioia to speak with Gaspipe. Supposedly, he relayed the message to Gaspipe via Georgie Nexapola. Consequently, in January of 1993, a prison ceremony was held on the 11th floor at the MCC, and Gaspipe inducted Michael Spinelli. Gioia would also testify against Rafi and his dealings he had with him in the heroin business. During his testimony, he explained how Rafi introduced him to John Gotti, who was playing cards in Joe Carraro's club in Little Italy at the time. He also would reveal a plot to kill Gotti's son, John Jr., by the Lucchese family, specifically Gaspipe. In 2004, he testified at the trial of Louis Dedone, who was the Lucchese acting boss at the time. Dedone would be convicted and given a life sentence. That same year, Gioia purchased a $500,000 house in Scottsdale. Part of his success was buying and reselling houses. By 2006, he linked up with a Phoenix businessman and opened indoor children's playgrounds in Mesa and Chandler, Arizona. Those playgrounds were eventually shut down, with Gioia's failing to pay the rent on the property that they were located on. Gioia's time as a government witness was devastating to the mob. As I mentioned, not just the Lucchese family, but the other families as well. And he would help the government convict up to 80 members and associates, many of whom pled guilty rather than have him testify against them. Nevertheless, Gioia did violate his agreement with the government by withholding information about his former girlfriend, Kim Smith, and her family, specifically her brother, Frankie Smith, seen here with her. But Gioia eventually disclosed all he knew. In 2007, he got involved in a deal to build a Toby Keith-themed restaurant. He created another company, Boomtown Entertainment, in 2009 and opened the first Toby Keith restaurant in Mesa soon after. Let me quickly mention the super thanks icon found beneath this video for anyone who'd like to show appreciation for this podcast that brings you videos such as this one, and thank you. In short, what Gioia was doing was getting upfront money for the build-outs of both Toby Keith and Rascal Flatts branded restaurants, which he was opening from Florida to Hawaii. And in most instances, these restaurants never came to be. He and his girlfriend and the mother of his kids, Tony Costa, opened up the Palmer Italian Roots restaurant in North Scottsdale, but that restaurant had its doors closed as well. She was the front person for the Rascal Flatts restaurant chain, although she claimed he manipulated her by putting her name on the records while he operated behind the scenes. Gioia was making money hand over fist, a lot of money. At times, he was making up to $250,000 per week and had over 100 bank accounts in different banks, which he had his mother control. He would reinvest his ill-gotten gains on more real estate ventures. With his Boomtown debit cards, he treated himself to luxury vehicles and property and jewelry. As far as the jewelry, it's been reported that he spent $2.7 million. In 2017, Gioia and his companies had judgments against him and was ordered to pay the plaintiffs $65 million. This was followed by more lawsuits for his failure to pay liquor, sales, and property taxes. In an ironic twist, one contractor secretly recorded him, which helped in the investigation. In February of 2020, he was indicted and arrested on 16 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering charges. To avoid the more serious charges, Gioia eventually pled guilty to conspiracy and tax evasion and agreed to repay $18 million, money that he swindled developers out of, in exchange for a 5-year sentence. His release date is actually next month, October 12, 2023. It'll be interesting to see what Gioia's next business venture will be.